Hello, everyone. We hope no one's on yet, so I want to make sure.
Oh, there's
Okay.
somebody.
Someone came on.
Yeah, I can't. Okay. Hello, everyone. Hi, Peggy. Nice to have you here. We're gonna be starting at the hour, but in the meantime, we thought we'd ask people to write where they're from or why you're here, or if you don't feel like any of that, what's your favorite season? Whatever. And I like spring, but I don't like the mud, especially with a Saint Bernard and a Newfoundland who have paws the
Whoa.
size of Montana.
Oh my God.
I swear I could be cleaning the floors every 2 hours.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
So,
I like fall.
yeah, I think that's my
I like
favorite.
the summer. I like the summer. I like the beach. I like to ride my motorcycle mostly.
Yeah,
Plus,
I
you
like
don't
the
have
sun.
you get, it gets warm, but it's not like, south warm.
it was last year. It
Was
has been
it?
the last couple of years. We were up into the
Yeah.
hundreds.
Ah,
We just get real bad
Yeah, we almost
humidity
don't we
here.
almost don't have season. Yeah.
ah.
We just it's almost like we don't have four seasons anymore though. Winter rolls into spring, which then bam goes right into summer. And then as the summer ends and everybody said, "Oh, it's a nice fall day. It's a sweater." All of a sudden, there's snow. But we don't have any climate problems. You understand?
No, I
No.
oh I know.
Not by any means.
No, we have no climate problems.
So I don't know where everybody is. We got a bunch of last minute people signing up. So we have like almost 100.
I saw that. Yeah,
Yeah.
and nobody has checked in yet except Peggy.
Nope.
They have access to this, right?
Yeah.
Do you? Oh, yeah, but you started it, so even if you said they couldn't come in, they can now, right?
Right. They can. Yeah.
All right. Well, we'll just chat and wait till 7 to start. Let's see. So it's 7 o'clock here in the east. So people are just getting in the door. And that means it's only 4 o'clock out in the Pacific coast. So somebody's still at work.
Yeah.
Maybe.
Yeah. I hope nothing's. Well, Peggy got in okay, so other people should be able to.
Yeah, I'm just checking to see if there are any messages.
Yeah, I just did too, and I'm not seeing any.
Nope. Tracey, I see that Rosie is signed up.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Where do you see that?
Oh, she posted on Facebook
Oh. Oh, okay.
about 10 minutes ago that she was coming.
I thought maybe you were seeing something that I wasn't seeing on the
No.
side.
No.
Oh, look, there's another one. Somebody else came. They're coming.
Welcome,
Yeah, feed them
everyone.
and
To
then
everybody who's coming, please let us know where you're from, why you're here, your favorite season, whatever you want to. We want to make sure that you're seeing us also. You can type in the chat section or the questions if you see our videos, because we were having a little problem. That would be helpful.
Oh, they're coming in slowly.
Yeah. Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining us. We'll be starting at the top of the hour. We were having a little bit of, excuse me, technical difficulty. So, okay, I can see and hear you. Oh, great. Glad to be here. Okay, great. Everything's fine. Whew.
Okay, no fears. Where can you see that? And I can't.
I know, I don't see that either.
Question. That's in the questions.
I'm not seeing
Maybe
the
you
question.
can't. Oh, maybe you're not. You can't. I don't know.
Oh, we can't see the chat.
As presenters, we can't unless
Okay.
you change the setting. Yeah,
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, I can't see. Yeah.
that's all right. You're right. That would be a
Yeah,
distraction
it's
for
okay.
us.
It
It
really
would be. Yeah.
We just can't say hi to all of our friends.
No.
Oh, yeah, I know.
Okay. Glad to be here. My son is an attempt survivor, so that's why they're here. Thanks.
Welcome.
Yes, welcome.
Hi.
Someone-
Hi.
Peggy is from Duluth, Minnesota, and she's here because she's had family members die by suicide, and she has a cold, so she's only going to be on audio. So hope we feel better soon. Anyone else want to let us know where they're from, why they're here, whatever you want? This is going to be a tad more informal than some other webinars, but we like it that way.
Just a tad.
Mhm.
Tracy, how come I have ashes in here? She should have stayed
She
here,
likes
too.
you better than me.
She does not.
Hi from Australia. That's Rosalind. Hi, Rosalind.
Whoa, all right.
Australia? I
Yeah.
want to go there.
Oh, who doesn't? Yeah, me too. Thanks for being here. I guess it's still a little sparse. I'm so surprised because, like I said, like as of the
Well,
right
it
before,
says,
we had like 98 people. So,
yeah, that's all right. They'll come rolling in as they can. Remember, again, across the time zone, trying to set this up as late as possible.
Yeah.
Across the time zone, people are still either in transit, coming home from work, or that's why, unless you set it like at 11 o'clock at night, Eastern time, then everybody's home. And
Yeah,
that's just a little hard to do, you know.
Yes.
I have a hard enough staying up at 10 o'clock to do the chat, the SPSM chat. At
Oh,
10
yeah, I
o'clock on a
know.
Sunday.
That's hard for me. For one thing, I'm not sure how I do it. Like, is it just on Twitter or do I log into here? But
I do a double screen. I have the YouTube on tab up, and I have the Twitter tab, and I go in
Okay.
between the two. But they're switching over to, Tracy, what is it called? Twitch?
Twitch, yeah. I've already been signed up
summer.
over there on Twitch, checking it out.
okay,
It seems like a pretty good
it's
program.
like a chat every Sunday night that's suicide prevention related. Suicide prevention social media or something like that is
Yep,
what it
That's
stands
exactly what it is.
Yep.
for. That's what we're talking about. People, if the attendees are wondering what we're talking about, that's what we're talking about. Well, we have a minute before we start. And people know too that they'll get the recording, so.
Right. And I know for a fact that several people said, honestly, I can't make it, but I don't want to miss it. And I said, well, then register because you'll be able to get the recording.
Right. All right. Well, I have that it's at the hour, so shall we start?
Sure.
Do you want to wait a little bit more, or? Okay. All right. I'm gonna just go ahead and start then. Welcome everyone to our webinar, Hope, Healing, and Resilience: Two Perspectives, an Attempt Survivor and the Family Impacted. Today, my speakers are Annemarie Matulis and Tracey Medeiros. Tracey Medeiros is a certified peer specialist, attempt survivor, and author of Embracing Perfection: The Healing Journey of a Suicide Attempt Survivor. In April 2017, she received the Paul Quinnett Attempt Survivor Award for her third place essay, Wicked Awesome Wish List, presented at the 50th Conference of the American Association of Suicidology. Additionally, in 2014, Ms. Medeiros received the Bristol County Suicide Prevention Leadership Award. Currently, she is working in the Emergency Services Unit at the front lines for crisis intervention specific to suicidality and is a trainer for several prevention and intervention modules. Annemarie Matulis has spent 35 years in the public, private, and nonprofit sectors, including domestic violence, substance abuse, and suicide prevention. She advocates for family, friends of those in suicidal crisis, is a suicide prevention trainer and certified suicide loss grief support facilitator. She produced 3 documentaries focused on suicide attempt survivors and their families and developed a wellness check workshop, a workbook, This is the Night, Finding Inner Peace, and retreat for family or friends of someone who has experienced a suicidal crisis. She is also co-author of Embracing Imperfection. I guess I should just say I'm Heidi Bryan. I think most of you know that. I'm been in suicide prevention since 1998, and I've started a blog, afteranattempt.com, and have been, and as a result of the blog, have started to do these webinars. So without further ado, I am going to let Annemarie and Tracey talk. So take it away, guys. And thank you so much for being here and agreeing to do this. I really appreciate it. And I'm looking forward to hearing you.
Thank you.
Thank you for inviting us. So, hey, everyone. My name is Annemarie Matulis. So just a little bit of an introduction. I am a consultant with the Mass Department of Public Health Suicide Prevention Program on several projects. And I know that I wear way too many hats. Under Mass DPH and the state coalition, we have 10 regional suicide prevention coalitions across the Commonwealth. I serve as the director for Bristol County, 20 cities and towns, 500,000 people. And unfortunately, we have a relatively high suicide rate for our state. Our state actually has very low numbers. I also work within the Garrett Lee Smith State and Tribal Grant, yes, for youth suicide prevention, one of my favorite projects. And within a nonprofit, I have produced and directed 3 documentaries in what we call affectionately our Voices series. And they center around suicide attempt survivors and the families. And we've expanded that, particularly with the last 2 of the 3 films. First film, A Voice at the Table, was for suicide attempt survivors, Tracey Medeiros, Cara Anna, Desiree Stage, and Craig Miller. Our last 2 films include people with kids at risk with eating disorder, self-injury, non-suicidal self-injury, and chronic suicidal thinking, but it doesn't matter. The fear is the same across the board. My passion is family and friends who have been impacted by a loved one's suicidal crisis. That has become my soapbox, if you will, over a period of time because of the lack of acknowledgement within the field of suicidology that we even exist, let alone bringing us and welcoming us to the table. And why this group? Because I am a part of it. And I hope we can make enough noise. And I hope this webinar is the 3rd that actually has, in the last several months, that has actually addressed the family, friends of attempt survivors and others in crisis, as well as with attempt survivors. And the journey that people always ask, how do Tracey and I, where it seemed like an odd group, it's kind of a sort of a mother-daughter thing. Some mutual friends brought Tracey to me almost 20 years ago and said, if someone can't get through to this kid, she'll die. And they were right. She almost did. But now let's fast forward to 2013. And with no background in videography, I thought it might be a great idea to develop a video to bring suicide attempt survivors to the tables. And we created that film, A Voice at a Table. And we received honorable mention at the SAMHSA Voice Awards in 2015. But in the midst of that project, at the end of 2013 into 2014, Tracey and I began to work on a peer-to-peer level wellness check workshop for suicide attempt survivors. And that was the original intent of the Re-Energize and Reconnect. And then we expanded it, but we'll talk about that a little later on. And at the same time, I started working on Is This the Night? Finding Inner Peace, a self-care workbook, retreat, workshop for people like me who were the family of someone in a suicidal crisis. And now I'm going to toss it over to Tracey.
Thanks, Annemarie. Hi, everyone. My name is Tracey Medeiros. And the first thing that you need to know about Annemarie is that she is no fun. She absolutely takes the you right out of fun. So professionally, I am a certified peer specialist, and I work at a local crisis unit in southeastern Massachusetts. It's something I've always wanted to do for a very long time, to be on the front lines and be able to offer lived experience to people in crisis, to give them hope. I'm a suicide attempt survivor. My last attempt was almost 20 years ago. And like Annemarie, I have many other hats, and I'll touch on some of them as we move forward. My passion is bringing attempt survivors and loss survivors together at the same table to learn from each other and enhance their respective healing. And I want to be clear, because we still get some pushback about this. I'm talking about attempt and loss survivors further along the healing path, not immediately after a loss or a recent attempt. And I also feel very strongly that we need to find a way to include family members to the table too. The more we learn from each other, the more we can save lives. Throwing the ball back to Annemarie, but that's something else she can't do, is catch the ball because she's just no fun. I think I'm really going to enjoy this. Oh, hey, catch.
Isn't she cute? I rent her out on weekends. You know, when we go shopping, people say, "Oh, she's so funny." I said, "Yeah, I rent her out on weekends." I just wanted to touch for people, give you a background on the Re-Energize and Reconnect workshop. It used to have this horribly long name, Re-Energize and Reconnect Wellness Check Workshop for Suicide Attempt Survivors. Yeah, we threw that out the window, and we dropped it down to the R&R. And the whole point of it was to offer a safe haven for suicide loss and attempt survivors now to come together and re-energize and recharge their the inside job, the internal psychological and emotional and spiritual batteries, and reconnect with living life fully. That's so important. As we started, when we were doing some research on this back in 2013 and 2014, and even when we were doing the film, A Voice at the Table, that's what we kept hearing from Tracey and Craig and Kara, Anna, and Desiree, was that there was nothing out there when they were trying to heal and grab on to life. There were no resources out there. There was no community where they could, no family where they could get together. And so this is why we decided to go peer to peer. Now, the R&R, and I think it's important to say, and we will probably stress it repeatedly, was intended for those further along the healing path, whether it was the attempt survivors and then later when the lost survivors joined us. We didn't intend this to be for someone in a recent crisis, but there are other programs within Massachusetts actually that were funded for those who were of a more recent batch. We've had a half a dozen different versions, enough to make you laugh. There was the one with the big stack that, you know, went way up, and then Tracey and I looked at it, we said, well, that was a lot of work, and we trashed that. And then we brought it down to like barely anything, and now we kind of have a in-between stage that we do. It's a structured spiritual exercise. I have no fan. I'm way too old to worry about like reinventing a wheel. We borrowed heavily from 12-step programs, from dialectical behavior therapy, cognitive behavior therapy, mindfulness, just about anything we could get our hands on that would give someone a solid, challenging spiritual wellness check workshop, you know, maybe once a month. This does not run all the time. Sometimes we do it for 5 months. We break for 2 months. And then we'll come back again. And sometimes the same people will join us or other people will join us. So that's from my perspective of how we developed it. And then I'm throwing it back to you, Trace, on your perspective.
Oh, thanks.
You're welcome.
So before we go any further, did we actually tell you how me and Annemarie came to work together? Actually, it was friends of friends of friends that we know, that we both mutually know. And they told me that I ought to go see this woman because like she could help me and stuff. So that's how we got connected, and I thought that was pretty good, and I guess we became tight ever since. You know, because she's like a second mother to me now, you know. Okay, so all right, so back to the perspective. Okay. I was reluctant to get involved with the film and more reluctant to get involved when Annemarie was creating the R&R. I've been working in a field for a number of years and currently work in a crisis unit. I'm good at what I do, talking with someone in crisis or working within a group setting, guiding people through their coping skills. But I'm not a writer. I can't imagine how people write grants. I really can't. They're like so thick. I see what Annemarie goes through, and I know what will work as a peer-to-peer program like the R&R. But to sit down and create it, it's just not my cup of tea, which I don't drink tea. So in that way, I just don't. But then I realized Annemarie is not an attempt survivor. I mean, she got a lot of it right developing the workbook. You don't spend all those years witness to my emotional roller coaster without learning something. But there are a few things in the exercises that I felt needed to be adjusted. So we worked together for months. Lucky that I had the support system to fall back on. And that helped as I was healing and recovering from my last attempt. But it's not the same as sitting at a table with a bunch of people who are just like you in that way, an attempt survivor. We may not have much else in common, but it doesn't matter. When we connect, there's a sense of relief, a sense of family. It's nice to sit with people and not have to explain yourself. And as we all said when finishing A Voice at the Table, there was nothing out there to allow that to happen. But as anyone who has worked to pull an attempt survivor support project knows, that's extremely difficult to coax attempt survivors out from the shadows. But I can tell you that session after session, we all come away feeling recharged and keep moving forward. And the same thing is happening with those family members getting involved with Is This the Night? I have the ball, but I won't toss it this time because I know she won't catch it anyway. So, Annemarie, time to share your perspective on the R&R and how it ties to the family and friends.
She loves to throw that ball around. She likes to bounce it off the ceiling, the wall in the kitchen too while we're talking, which is a wonderful distraction. So one of the things that happened is that as we were writing, as we were working on the Re-Energize and Reconnect, I was also working on Is This the Night? So we were doing two curriculum at the same time. And when we looked at what attempt survivors were asking for or were struggling with, not struggling is too strong of a word, just that sense of not feeling sharp enough emotionally. So the challenging questions that we would put out there apply just as equally to those of us as family members. And I kind of put myself back into that perspective of working with that. So one of the major changes, though, that was an important connection is that within our workbook for Is This the Night? Questions come up from the family. So I interviewed a lot of families of suicide attempt survivors. And there was this piece of frozen in time that didn't happen so much with the attempt survivor community at the table, our family at the table, as it did with the parents. Because if you are in the audience and you are the family of someone who has had a suicidal crisis or is currently in a suicidal crisis, you know that paralyzing fear, is this the night? And parents keep asking me, well, what do I do? They ask questions like, I was planning a trip next month. Should I cancel it? Should I withdraw from all my volunteer work and my hobby and the basketball team, the adult basketball team I play with? Should I ask for family leave from my job? Should I resign? Should I quit my job and stay home all the time? Or if I don't quit my job, do I need to get someone to come in and stay in the house? And when the person at risk is younger, do I let them go back to school? Do I let them go back to all those afternoon clubs? Do I let them go on the field trips? Do I let them go on trips with their teams or the chorus or the band? I'd love to tell you there are great answers for that, but they're not. They're individual. But in the workbook, we also talk about, and this is where we hear a lot of the same conversation over at the Re-Energize and Reconnect table, that control does not equal love. And I can tell you, I still struggle with that. Let's be totally honest. I don't think you ever, yeah, see, she's shaking her head. I try not to do the 20 questions, where you're going, who you're going out with, when are you coming home? Because I know she got peppered with that as a kid, and it's so, but we get very controlling. And we think it's love, and we think we want to keep them safe, or we want to fix it. And that just doesn't always work. And it's very hard to pry the grip open and let your hand way wide and smooth. I almost feel like sometimes when I'm sitting at the table with families of attempt survivors and those in suicidal crisis, I should have that damn song from Frozen on. I can push the button, so, let it go, let it go. Because that is so fearful. But there's another piece that is so important, that is so common to these. And so we talk about forgiveness, we talk about anger, we talk about fear, we talk about dreams, and Tracey's going to talk a little bit about that. And it's also, we have one of the exercises we brought in from the R&R is what me color. When you get a group of adults to sit down at a table and you start suggesting that maybe coloring would be therapeutic and helpful, I probably can't repeat some of the things that have been said. But the reality is that distractions are important. And our therapy and coloring and video games and a bunch of other things actually work. We have scientific evidence to say that. So distractions are important when you're dealing either on the family side of it or with the attempt survivors, lost survivors together. And I need to stress, because I believe we probably have some lost survivors listening, or watching this webinar, or will be when the recording goes out. The lost survivors at our R&R table are further along the healing path. We have a companion grief support. I'm a grief support facilitator. I'm a lost survivor. We have a grief support. We call it the kitchen table conversation. It runs simultaneous with the R&R. R&R is in one part, and in the kitchen tables in the other. And so that we address the grief, that's important. But we allow the lost survivors to pick the time for themselves if they want. They say, no, I want to go in that room. I want to do what they're doing. They're laughing more than we are. I want to go in that room. So Tracey, why don't you? Yeah, Trace, why don't you talk a little bit about how distraction, how you guys at that table deal with distractions?
Okay. In the beginning, we felt it might be easiest to start with what we call Dreams Matter, but I wasn't too sure if it would work. I don't like to talk about the unfinished symphonies in my life. I have way too many. But I took the plunge and talked about what became for all of us the wicked awesome wish list. For me, it was to go back to college, get a motorcycle, and lose weight. When I finished, I looked around and everyone jumped in, one at a time, saying how grateful they were to be able to talk about this stuff without hearing criticism or judgment, which typically came from their families or loved ones. When we added lost survivors, I wasn't sure how that would work, but we found out that they felt the same way as we did, and like us, didn't feel they had any safe place to talk about that. Completing the entire exercise is not that simple. Each workshop is 90 minutes, and we often leave time to form a self-determined homework. Maybe take a walk a couple of times a week, or dust off that camera we love. One attempt survivor had stopped knitting after her last attempt. So she picked it up again and felt awesome. It's simple stuff. It's always about self-inventory, keeping the focus on our own spiritual development. We've begun discussion how to best bring samples of the workshops to more people, webinars, videos. We'll have something in place within a month or so. We took slightly different approach to some of the topics with parents and other family members because we recognized that so much that they were experiencing was just fear driven. Back to you, Annemarie. Don't forget, catch the ball.
Catch the ball.
Oops,
Yeah.
wait, she dropped it. Oh, see, that's why I don't throw it to her.
I told you, I rent her out on weekends, guys. Come on, give me a bid. Give me a bid. So I think at this point, what I wanted to talk, what I think I'd like to interject into the conversation is where we go from here, not as a closing remark, but how this has expanded. So Tracey mentioned this is our third webinar. So if you haven't, if you didn't know about the first two, send me an email. Our contact information will be on slides as we close out. We worked with United Survivors, and United Survivors had myself and our good buddy Masha Epstein from Lawrence, Kansas. Were on, and that was back in December 12th, I want to say. And it was about let their voices be heard. And it was about how can we, as the family and friends of attempt survivors, make that noise, really make that noise. And I'll share something that I did. I was on a conversation yesterday morning. Yeah, it was yesterday. The days fly. Yesterday morning with Sally Spencer Thomas, because she and Stephanie Willard and I are doing a panel at AAS 18 in Washington. And I remember being out, and Tracey and I were out at the Colorado conference in 2015, and Lanny Berman was the one of the keynote speakers, and he ended his presentation with, we need an army. We need an army to fight suicide. And I kind of wanted to raise my hand. I did one of these little things to myself there, and I said, I think I know where we can get one. So because when you look at the numbers, if we have 44,000 people die by suicide, and you multiply that by the, I think, ridiculous number 25 who have attempted or known to have attempted, that's 1 million plus. And now take that group and now say, take it number 10, parents of attempt survivors, grandparents, a sibling or two with the cat, the dog, and a best friend. You've got millions of people who are in the category of family friends of suicide attempt survivors. That's an army, any way you want to look at it. And then I noticed on a listserv about a year ago, the same comment came up of, we need an army. And at that point, I said very firmly, I know where we can get one. So when we're talking about these wonderful workshops that really, and I have to tell you, seriously, we laugh more than we cry, but we do cry sometimes. But it's always about your own personal inventory. So the distractions are important. The exercises we have now, about 15 that go with the R&R. We have just as many that go with the Is This the Night? If you've seen the workbook, that workbook is really was developed. That's the one I developed for St. Louis NAMI, who are doing a zero suicide process out there as a zero suicide program where they have education training, and then they have a end of the month peer-to-peer group. And that Tracey and I really focus on peer-to-peer. That's so much, so that's important. And Trace, I'm going to throw it back to you right now.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
Yeah. So I know you mentioned distractions before. Sorry,
Yeah.
so I didn't.
That's right.
I didn't quite go over that. So I'm going to go over that now.
Go.
So So there's been a lot said about how art therapy can help lower stress levels. I discovered that for myself, playing video games actually helped me concentrate better. I can also tell you that this was not something Annemarie got right away. I'm going to tell you that right now. I mean, she knew about this, and she would just totally encourage this at the teen center, but not with me. You know, I don't get her sometimes. But what she didn't get was that I was not being rude by playing video games while she was trying to talk to me about important stuff. She's a little better about it now, but every once in a while you're going to hear her say, "Can you put that damn phone down?" You know, and she'll walk out of the room and then she'll come right back and say, "Okay, I'm sorry. Let's try this again." And then we'll laugh. And by the way, I'll still continue to be on my phone. Just saying. I can't sit still for long periods of time. How I'm doing this webinar, I'll never know. I just can't. You lose me after about 10 minutes. Your fault. It's no one's fault. It's how my brain works. Unless you're Barry Walsh, of course. I hang on every word he says about self-injury. And Bart Andrews last year at AAS, and about not fitting in, I just wanted to jump up and just cheer my little head off because it was awesome. When I color, you can talk to me for hours. So against the initial wishes of the no fun lady over there, we introduced Mandalas and other designs at the R&R. When loss survivors began to join us, they jumped right in. Sometimes in the early sessions, if there was like awkward moments or two, everyone later said that coloring, you know, it helped them to not be uncomfortable. It was really helpful distraction. So we've learned from experience that having some form of distraction available at workshops really does help. So we color, and Annemarie keeps on topic and on time with our discussion. But it's a good thing that she does, because we might never get through the exercises left to our own devices. So you need someone, you know, like that to facilitate the series. You know, someone that's no fun. Oh, sorry. That was a compliment, Annemarie, by the way.
Thank you.
In case you didn't know.
In case I didn't know, right? So I guess where I'd like to go now is to just talk about my perspective of how this all got written. And my background in public health began in domestic violence because I was a battered woman. And when I first started writing now I'm talking specifically about Is This the Night? Finding Inner Peace, that wellness check workshop for the family and friends of attempt survivors or those in suicidal crisis. And I remember that fear. I mean, I actually remember seeing that fear first and foremost in my mother. And I never knew what it was. And she finally said to me, probably 15 years after my father had died. My father was a self-admitted alcoholic. He just didn't go to AA meetings. But what I discovered 15 years after he had died was that she spent every night in fear if he wasn't home on time that he was drinking. And that so explained my mother to me, and so explained the whole family dynamic. As a battered woman, that's exactly where I ended up. Is this the night I'll die? And then it went into indifference. But as I started writing the exercises for Is This the Night, in the fear as the family of a suicide attempt survivor, I saw the parallels and the connections there. So it was, on one hand, disturbing, and on the other hand, cathartic to go through these exercises as we were writing them, because that was how I felt. I remember that fear. And so while this sounds so much more serious, that was what was so incredibly helpful in pulling together the exercises. And you know, it's not uncommon. I've always said, as we over the 4 years with these workbooks, that if you are the survivor of domestic violence, you could certainly probably benefit from the workbook too. And the same with substance abuse. There's the same fear, you know. Is this the night there's going to be more violence? Is this the night he'll drink again? Is this the night they'll overdose? That fear permeates the families of suicide attempt survivors and those in other suicidal crises. And I think most family members will tell you that we cover it up pretty well. But it's there like in the back of your head. It's not in your consciousness necessarily every day. It's not like you're wearing it like a shawl, but it's there. You know, it's definitely there. So I just wanted to touch on that point. The exercises we talk about, stay out of the sandbox. Because you look pretty silly at your age jumping in the sandbox, and so as the family member, what's the dynamic there, the perspective? I'm old, I think I'm right, therefore she should listen to me. And then I can sit there with my high-heeled boots and end up flat into the sand. And that's the point where I remember my mentor saying to me years ago, you know, Annie, you can be so right, you're wrong when you're doing that. And then what happens from that, if our loved ones that we're worried about don't listen to us, then the word the 3 R's of anger, resentment gets in there. And that can also develop into a hit list that the attempt survivors talk about it and the families talk about it. Who's on the hit list? Typically, the clinicians, your family, the family for not supporting you and understanding, clinicians for not supporting you and understanding you, the ER people who admitted you and treated you like second level person, and then if they're over 18, shut the family out, you know, which sometimes might be a good thing, and sometimes may not be a good thing. I mean, you can go down the list. So when you're wondering about how we take an inventory and we find that balance, that inner peace and that balance, that's how it works. And for those who are loss survivors, I also want to share that this is where the beauty of the balance between attempt and loss survivors comes in. You may be coming from different places, but it's amazing how similar the feelings are. And Trace, I'm just going to throw it back to you for another couple of minutes.
Okay, if you insist.
I insist.
Okay, so I want to share to attempt survivors and their families how important it is to me to do this wellness check workshop. And again, we usually do it once a month for 5 months, take a break, and then start again. It keeps me plugged in emotionally and spiritually. I have learned so much from other attempt survivors and loss survivors when it comes to how to cope with a setback, really good stuff. And the more I talk to and communicate with other attempt survivors and loss survivors, the more that helps me at home with my friends. And that's important. How can I better communicate with my family? It's not easy sometimes. I ended up writing a book, a conversational memoir, and some members of my family read it and finally understood what I went through and how I survived. Most of them had no idea. Because for me, with all of my diagnoses, I haven't always played nice. I mean, really, there's depression, bipolar, borderline personality disorder, and PTSD. I'm almost 52, and I'm still learning about myself and how to get along with others. And I do not intend as a criticism of clinicians or people who do research stuff, but I pay more attention to someone who has walked in my shoes, someone who has lived the suicide crisis. It's frustrating to know that there is such judgment and fear around clinicians being able to shout out loud the "yeah, me too." I survived an attempt, or self-injured, or had an eating disorder, or still have chronic thoughts of suicide. So we're here in Southeastern Mass, but we're working on a lot of options to share the R&R across the country and beyond. And you don't have to use our program, but I hope you will do something, because there's a lot of attempt survivors out there still feeling alone. And just as many loss survivors further along the healing path who may never have sat and listened to an attempt survivor. I'm going to let Annemarie wrap it up so we can get some of your comments and questions.
That's nice of you.
Isn't it?
Yeah, it is. So to bring everything back together again, I don't think anywhere either of us thought we would be here doing this, and yet it's probably exactly where we were headed. Our backgrounds, we have worked together now for the better part of 20 years. We co-founded a local domestic violence grassroots coalition because we were sticking up for the underdogs. I guess is really nobody was talking about it still 20 years ago, even no matter what. And so that evolved. Then we co-founded a teen center for kids at risk, not at risk with criminal justice, at risk with their social emotional issues. So many of the kids, we've had some 900 kids come through the teen center in the last 9 years, and the vast majority had some kind of emotional challenge. And there were some suicide attempts. A lot of the kids had depression. The ACEs, the adverse childhood experience, would kick up. And we moved into suicide and prevention 9 years ago. And it's interesting because what prompted that was we found out we had high suicide attempt rates in our county, but we had no resources here in Bristol County. It's in southeastern Massachusetts. And we said, well, we just can't not do something about it. We came back from a conference and said, well, I guess we'll have to start another coalition, won't we? And we started one for suicide prevention. And I don't know if Tracey touched on it, and I don't know if Rosie's on tonight. I know she was signed up, but it was having an International Survivors Day, an AFSP International Survivors Day at our teen center for our kids to hear a lost survivor share her story. And Rosie did that. Yet the one who was most profoundly impacted that day was Tracey. That was a turnaround. In assist, we talk about the assist training. We talk about where's that turnaround where you hook on to life. And it was an attempt survivor listening to a lost survivor. So the families have so much in common. We've had 3 documentaries so far. There are probably more out there. They all center around the suicide attempt survivors, those in suicidal crisis, and their families. This is our 3rd webinar. We have 2 books. Tracey has her conversational book, Embracing Imperfection, which, by the way, is appropriate for anyone 13 and up to read, where you can see the resilience and the growth along with the things that happened. And we're going to hit the road. So I don't know if we're coming to a place near you soon, but we're doing a road show. We'll be heading out to the American Association of Suicidology in just a couple of weeks. Tracey's doing a workshop with Tom Cruise on certified peer specialist, military and civilian. I'm doing a workshop with Rick Strait from Missouri. We're both parents of suicide attempt survivors, family. And then I'm doing the one with Sally Spencer Thomas and Stephanie Willard, which talks about the families of suicide attempt survivors and in those who experience suicidal crisis, as well as murder-suicide. So that's a tough subject altogether. Then we're going to be going out to Denver. We're coming out to Colorado, guys. We're going to be at Bridging the Divide. Love any excuse for a trip to Colorado. And then in July, that's in May, and in July, we're coming out to Southeast Missouri. And I finally get to meet the people at NAMI St. Louis that I've been working with for several months to help them with creating a wellness check workshop for their family and friends. And I don't know if I mentioned that the book that's available now, Is This the Night, was designed for those in immediate crisis, in a current crisis, for the families of those in immediate crisis. Because you know what? When you're in an immediate crisis, all you're thinking about is taking care of your loved one, and you're totally forgetting you need to take care of yourself. You hear it over and over again. What does that stewardess say to you? She said, when the oxygen masks come down, you put it on first so you can take care of your kids. And that's the context that we have in talking about this. So, and then in October we'll be down in Maryland again, doing a 2-day presentation of all of this into a community college campus. So we've shared snippets and bits and pieces. We wanted to do this conversationally. I hope that's worked for you. See, when we go back and forth like this is what it's like to have a family member who's a suicide attempt survivor, who you'll sit there talking to and say, did I miss a paragraph or something, or a whole page? But it keeps it vibrant. It keeps it flowing. It keeps it going. And Heidi, I think we're going to bring you back in and tell us, are there any questions, comments? Audience, now's your time. Pick our brains. Yell at us. Do something. We're waving.
Yes. Okay. So yeah, we have a couple questions. One is from Laura, who says, I hate the question, do you think your son really wanted to die? I'm not sure it really matters. We all lived through his ER care and a night in the ICU to make sure he didn't die, and it was traumatic. How do you recommend responding to people who ask that type of question?
Tracey, I'll go first, and then you can follow up.
Sure.
All right. I think one of the most important things, and I do this, I'm guilty. Sometimes Tracey will come in the door from work, or I'll go down the other end of the house to where we have wings. She's on her end, and she said, I'm coming to your house. I said, okay, well, I'll go down to her house. And what comes out of my mouth is, what's wrong? You know, if she seems quiet or withdrawn, that's the wrong thing to ask. What are you feeling? You know, not what's wrong. It's to make it the negative. When someone asks, why does someone want to die? Every instinct within me says, I want to know what's keeping him alive. What does he have? What is he going to live for? What's the hook that we can give them? We talk about that a lot in trainings, particularly assist of find that, I call it that thin thread of hope. Whatever can get someone who's in that kind of a crisis, Laura, who there's always something. We just have to dig. You know what? It's work. Rather than just say, oh, why did he want to die? No, let's talk about what's the life force in here. We may never know. Trace, I'm going to turn it over to you, because if you could share what happens to you when you're in that moment, I think that might help answer that question.
So, you know, when someone's in that space, it's really very dark and bleak, and you're very, very depressed. And there's really not a whole lot on your mind except for ending the pain that you feel. So to me, naturally, it's become a natural that, you know, because I was in that dark place, that I felt like the only need was to die, was to get rid of it. That's how I would get rid of it, you know, and then maybe I'd be free and clear. But it's a place I don't want anybody to be in.
But there wasn't like a list of causes, was there?
No. Yeah. I didn't have a list of a cause. It entered my head, and I couldn't get rid of it. And then I was fixated on it. And then I started planning. And then once the planning took place, and once I had it all in place, I was completely fine. And then I tried to kill myself.
Because Laura, go ahead, Heidi.
I was just going to say too to Laura that I don't know if you're also asking how do you know, that I get the impression too that people are saying to you, well, do you think he wanted to die when they find out about your son's attempt? And you don't know how to respond to that either. And, you know, that is, I think that's something that you can easily say, you know, I just don't feel comfortable talking about it, or, you know, I don't know, you know, he's the one who wanted to die or didn't want to die or wanted to end his pain or something, you know.
Yeah.
I think you have every right to just say, I don't really want to talk about that. You know, it was traumatic. I don't really, you know, want to talk about that.
Right, because unfortunately most people will look at you, and what we hear from parents all the time is, I don't want to tell anybody that my son had an attempt or my daughter has an eating disorder because they're going to say I'm a bad parent. And no, you're not. You're not. There's no blame here. There has no blame. And I misunderstood
No.
Hattie. I thought she meant that the people in the emergency room were asking why he wanted to die. And at that point,
Well, and maybe,
Yeah.
no one's going to know. God, I wish there was an answer for that. That there is attempt survivors, like Tracey will tell you, they don't have any clear cut. It's not like, oh, here's a list of points 1, 2, and
Points
3.
1, 3. Yeah, I know. Like, it doesn't happen like that. You know, it's
no, it was, and yeah, I mean, for me, it's much more difficult. Give me reasons to live. It's like, well,
Yep.
it's everything. It's my life. You know,
Right.
it's everything. You know, it's not one thing.
yeah. It's
Yeah.
almost like I had to teach myself how to keep moving forward. But, you know, with that question, it's like, really, it's none of their business. Unless you want to make it their business.
Right,
I'm sorry, I'm
right.
kind of blunt.
No, be blunt. That's all right.
Another question we had, and I think I answered it, but Tracey, who was it that made you sit and listen as it was just awesome? Was that Bart Andrews or
During
Barrett Walsh?
yes, when he was doing his presentation, he was doing a presentation on how to fit in.
Okay.
And
About not fitting in. Yeah.
about not fitting in, about, you know, just not being able to fit in. And I thought it was wonderful, you know.
Okay. And AAS, for those who may not know, is American Association of Suicidology. And then Laura asks, sounds great, also interested in how we can attend or start workshops, which we're going to get into next. But I just wanted to add a few more comments because I love this. It turns out that the workshop, that the support group, I devised the support group for attempt survivors and then concurrently have a support group for the family members. It was a pilot. And it's what's striking to me is that they sound like they're very, very similar to, like, our groups are very, very similar to yours.
Cool.
And I love to, yeah, I mean, like, and which is interesting because we came up with it independently.
Separately, right? I know.
Yeah,
I know.
and
Doesn't that freak you out? Yeah, it's like, okay, we know this works then.
yeah. And I love the control does not equal love, because I think that is something that everyone struggles with, you know, as a recovering alcoholic, as a married to a recovering alcoholic, having lived with alcoholics in my life, you know, it's really hard to not to let go at times. You know, I really have to struggle with that. And it's so I really thought, thank you for that. And the other thing, which is in line with what did you mean? Because I think I know, but then I don't. What did you mean by sandbox? Like staying out of the sandbox.
All right, everybody, let's give you a quick visual.
Picture big giant cat litter.
Yeah, right. Think of the old-fashioned sandboxes, right? Now, I'm 72. I'll be 72 in June, so I'm old, you know, and I'll still pop around in high heel boots. Probably shouldn't, but we'll still walk around in high heel boots, right? So picture me standing in a sandbox, arguing with someone. Someone needs to make a point. Now remember, I come from a background of domestic violence. So I never had a point of view.
Mm.
So when I started to heal from that, you needed to hear my point of view. And then you needed to know that it was a right point of view. And I was just going to stand there. I fully understand. In another lifetime, I was incredibly intentionally intimidating, overpowering. I'd walk in the room and people would scatter. They didn't say, "Oh, hi, Annemarie, how are you?" They say, "Oh my God, here she comes," you know. And I got, and a wonderful person said to me, "Now I want you to picture yourself. You're so intent on getting your point across and making sure they not only hear you but agree with you. See, there's the catch there. But agree with you that your high heel boots have just gone in the sand. And if you keep it up, you're going to be into your knees. Now, don't you think that you feel a little silly at your age doing something like that? You know? Oh, and before your heels went in too deep, I'll bet you kicked the sand around a little bit too. So we ask both the families and the attempt survivors, lost survivors who work together to be honest, really honest about, so in the course of the last 4 weeks, did you jump in the sandbox? And it's funny, it doesn't take long before people come to the table without us saying anything, and they'll say, "So I almost jumped in the sandbox this week," you know, and because we give them that visual, you know, and then when they thought it was safe, they find out that in each workbook there's sandbox 2, which refines it down from there. It was just a simple, wonderful graphic that was given to me, and I thought, you know, we've got to go with that. Another one of the ones that we do is Bear Hugs Kettle, and that's from an Emmett Fox daily meditation, and that's, and again, that's about not knowing how to let go. The bear hugs the kettle till the kettle burns the bear and the bear dies.
Okay.
And that's what we do. You know, that I stayed in my comfort zone as a battered woman because I was afraid to step away from it. What would happen to me? You know, and in suicide prevention and the healing in the families, we do Bear Hugs Kettle a lot. We do Bear Hugs Kettle a lot.
And the same thing with a suicide attempt survivor, where
Yeah.
whereas like we're afraid of that change because change might make us well,
Yeah.
but if we stay where we are, then
It's your comfort zone.
it's our
Yep.
comfort zone. Yeah,
It's what we know. Yep.
Yeah, it's what we know. So we hold on to it like a death grip.
Yeah.
And it's hard. It is, letting go is not easy. Letting go of that control, Heidi, is not easy.
No, it isn't.
That's where walking comes in, so you can clear your head and say, "Oh,
Yes.
I did it again, didn't I? Yeah, you did."
Well, I want to give you time to talk about how people can find out more. So,
Okay.
I have the slide up.
So you have the slide up. So a voice at the table. This came out of our December 12th. Heidi, you facilitated that, right? The December 12th one?
Yes.
Yes. So it seems like 100 years ago, doesn't it?
Yes.
And so for everybody listening, when we were ending up the webinar in December, the question was asked, well, what do we do now? And we already had a voiceathetable.org as a website. It was pretty stagnant. There wasn't much of anything happening to it. And I said, well, we've already got a website that really kickstarted all of this. So let's do that. So we've turned it from just being a documentary to a website to a movement. And we are creating on a Voice at the Table, and it's really in a rough draft right now, but we're reorganizing it to become the home base, national home base for all family and friends of those who have a suicidal experience or have experienced a suicidal crisis. And we're going to power load it with all the resources we can get our hands on. Now, doesn't that sound wonderful? Do you know how many there are? Count them on one hand. Right now, I'm hoping that we revisit this a year from now. Let's circle the date, and I'm hoping that next year at this time we can not even count how many resources that we have found available across the world, even for the family and friends of attempt survivors, those in suicidal crisis, as well as the attempt survivors, because that's where the hope is. If we can heal together, then we can prevent suicide. So the website will be the place that we'll be putting up a calendar probably next weekend, and let you know what's going on, where's going on. We have new films, we have new videos that we'll be putting up there. We'll be putting these webinars up there. So that will be a start. That will be a
Okay.
start.
Do you want me to advance the slide?
Sure. I have no idea
Okay.
what it says. I forget.
It's, there's also,
There
we
you
also
go.
have,
That's
we also
contact
have,
information.
okay, good. We also have another question came in.
Okay.
My older sister is an attempt survivor, I guess over a year ago or so, and still will not share anything with the family. Myself and another sister are the only immediate family members who know, and we have attempted to talk to her, and she just says no. I guess they're just, I don't think there's a question there, but
It's too common. And we talked about this
Yeah.
a little bit. I think when we did our practice, Heidi, Tracy, right? We talked a little bit about the fact that
yeah, I think so.
unfortunately for everybody listening, we have there's no clear research. That's and I'm not big on sticking my head in the book and doing all the research and all that stuff. But the reality is no research has been done to say, well, how many attempt survivors never reconcile with their families? Never talked to their families about that attempt, or tried, and the families were so terrified they pushed them away. And that's why we talk about that hit list and how to let go of that and do some forgiveness with the family. Because I can tell you, Tracy and I both experienced childhood abuse, childhood sexual abuse. And the same thing happened to us that has happened to millions of people. When we went to our parents for support, we were asked what we did to cause it. We were blamed. With a suicide attempt, I know what my mother's problem was at the time, and Tracy's mom. It was fear. They didn't know what to do with that. They weren't educated and informed and enlightened enough to know how to help. It was just scary. That's so true, again, with families of anyone in a suicidal crisis. The families are not conditioned. We haven't given them enough information because this is still such a closet, secreted topic for public health.
Yep.
Everybody can talk about heart disease. Everybody can talk about cancer,
Yep.
and families support each other. But when it comes to suicide, you don't get that family support, unfortunately. So one of the things we're working towards, Heidi, is being more public, and then maybe through the process of the workshops, help people find ways to maybe extend the olive branch, or at least try.
Try.
And if they can't, then to make peace within themselves, not be angry about it. That's the big deal. Oh, and
I
there's
mean,
Tracy's information.
I
Yes.
still don't talk to my family about my suicide attempt. They
Yeah.
read it in a book. That's how they found out. They had no idea until I wrote the book, and then that's how they learned.
And they still don't know what to say.
Yeah, they still don't know
Yeah,
how to talk to me.
and you can't, my mother would sometimes try and force me to talk about a certain issue that she wanted to talk about, and it would always shut me down. And I think as long as your sister knows that she can go to you when she should she want to talk, that you're open to it, I think that's really all you can do. You can't force her to talk about it if she doesn't want to talk about it.
Right.
And just let her know she's important.
Yeah.
Yeah, just support her, because that's really what she needs, is just
more
the
than
support.
anything.
She needs to know that,
You
that
love
she
her.
can go to you, and that you love her, you know what I mean? And that, and that you're not going to judge her in any way,
And someday she just might. Yeah.
Yeah. And then someday she just may talk about it, maybe she's just not ready right now.
It took Tracy 10 years to talk about it openly.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, that's a good point. So I know Roslyn also wants some information, but she was given your contact information now, and plus I can always give you information too. But so I think she'll be in touch with you. So we are at the hour.
Okay.
I could talk to you guys forever, I think, about this. I love it. I love
Anytime.
this. I love the.
Anytime. Of course.
I hope we can work together, and I just thought this was great.
Well, thank you for inviting us.
Yes, thank you.
And yeah, and we'll be in touch, I'm sure. And thank you everyone who attended. So
All
take
right.
care.
All
Good
right.
night.
Take
Bye,
care.
Ryan.
Good night. Thank you.